The alarm screamed through the bridge of the UES horizon, and Commander Tamin knew something was terribly wrong. His hands moved across the controls, trying to understand what his sensors were telling him. The hyperspace lane back to Earth had simply vanished. Not damaged. Not blocked. Gone. "Sir, I'm getting nothing," his communications officer said, her voice shaking. "All the relay stations are dead. Every single one." Tae-min stared at the empty space where humanity's connection to the galaxy should have been. For 89 years, Earth had been part of the Galactic Council. They were junior members, yes, but they belonged. They had trade routes, diplomatic channels, and millions of humans living on colony worlds scattered across 3 sectors. Now, in an instant, all of that had been cut away. "Try the emergency channels," Tae-min ordered. "Use everything we have." They tried for 6 hours. Nothing worked. The horizon was stranded in the outer reaches, and home had disappeared from the map. 3,000 light years away. On the massive council station called Viridian Prime, Ambassador Ji Woo was learning the truth. She stood in a sealed chamber, facing 7 of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They called themselves the Hegemony, and their faces showed no mercy. "You have activated a containment protocol," Ji Woo said slowly, understanding flooding through her. "You've cut us off deliberately." The Velothian counselor, a being named Haiyan, nodded his massive head. "Earth has become a Category 5 existential threat. Your species grows too fast. You expand too aggressively. You question too much and accept too little. In 3 generations, you have done what takes most species 30. We cannot allow this to continue." Ji Woo felt her hands trembling. She forced them still. "How long?" 1,000 years, another counselor said. "By then, either your species will have destroyed itself, or evolved into something less dangerous. Either way, the galaxy will be safe." "You're condemning billions to isolation," Ji Woo said. "Our colonies will starve. Our economy will collapse. You're killing us slowly." Haiyan leaned forward. "We are saving the galaxy. The technology we used is ancient, predating even the architects. It cannot be undone. Your sun is now wrapped in a barrier that nothing can cross. No ships, no signals, no light. From outside, your system simply does not exist anymore." Ji Woo thought of her daughter on Earth, her parents, the millions of humans who woke up this morning as citizens of a galactic civilization and would go to sleep tonight as prisoners in their own solar system. "You will regret this." "We have made difficult choices before," Haiyan said. "We will survive the guilt." On Earth, President Dayun stood before cameras broadcasting to every corner of the planet. Behind her, the image of a starfield showed their new reality. Where thousands of stars should have been visible, there was now only darkness. The barrier was absolute. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice steady despite everything. "Today we learned that fear is stronger than friendship in the hearts of those we called allies. The Galactic Council has imprisoned us in our own home. They have taken our colonies, our trade, our future as they understood it." She paused, letting the weight of it settle. "But they have made a mistake. They think isolation will weaken us. They believe cutting us off will make us less dangerous. They are wrong." Dayun smiled, and there was something fierce in it. "We are going to use this time. Every year. Every day. We're going to build, grow, and evolve beyond anything they can imagine. And when we break free, and we will break free, they will understand what they've created. If they wanted us as partners, they should have treated us as equals. Now they'll face us as something else entirely." The broadcast ended. Around the world, the shock began to transform into something harder. Something determined that within a month, Project Exodus was born. Chief Scientist Bonhua assembled the best minds humanity had. The Council's regulations had always held them back, forcing them to develop slowly and cautiously. Those regulations were gone now. The ethical guidelines imposed by alien species who feared human innovation no longer applied. "We're going to do everything they forbade," Bonhua told his team. Aggressive terraforming, neural enhancement, quantum computing beyond the safety limits, genetic optimization, everything. Captain Su Jin led the first mission to Mars. Without Council oversight, they used atmospheric processors that would have been banned as too destructive. The machines tore apart the Martian surface, ripping out minerals and spewing atmosphere at a rate that would have horrified the careful, slow-developing species of the Council. Within 2 years, Mars had a breathable atmosphere. Within 5, it had oceans. "It's not pretty," Sujin reported back to Earth. "But it works. And we did it ourselves. The generation ships were next. Without access to hyperspace lanes, humanity couldn't travel faster than light using conventional methods. So they built enormous vessels designed to travel for centuries, carrying thousands in suspended sleep. These ships began crawling toward the nearest stars, slow but unstoppable. They would take 400 years to reach their destinations. Humanity was planning for a future the Council thought they'd never see, but the real work happened in the laboratories. Engineer Young Su gathered a team of 12 researchers, all of them brilliant and all of them angry. They had one goal: break the laws of physics the Council said couldn't be broken. Hyperspace lanes are stable because the architects built them 1,000,000 years ago, Young Su explained. But they're not the only way to exceed light speed. They're just the safe way. His team began experimenting with ripping holes directly in space-time. The first 17 attempts failed catastrophically, destroying entire research stations. The 18th attempt worked, if only for 0.003 seconds. A probe jumped 3 light years before the tier collapsed and vaporized it. "We need more power," Young Su said. "And we need to not care about what it costs." By the end of the first year, Earth's economy had completely restructured. Without galactic trade, they had to be self-sufficient. Asteroid mining increased 1,000-fold. The outer planets became industrial zones, their atmospheres harvested for fuel. Jupiter's moons sprouted hundreds of shipyards. The hegemony had intended the quarantine to weaken humanity. Instead, it removed every limitation they had faced. Commander Tae-min, still stranded in the outer reaches with the Horizon and 24 other human ships, made a decision. They couldn't go home, but they could prepare. Using the resources of 3 uninhabited systems, they began building a forward base. When the barrier finally came down, however many centuries that took, humanity would have a foothold outside their prison. On the last day, before the barrier fully solidified, Tae-min sent one final message toward Viridian Prime. He didn't know if anyone would hear it. He didn't care. "This is Commander Tae-min of the United Earthship Horizon. You wanted us contained. You wanted us controlled. You wanted us to stop growing, stop changing, stop being what we are. Fine. You've locked us away from the galaxy. But you've also freed us from your rules, your limits, your fear. We're going to spend this time becoming everything you were afraid we could be. And when we come back, and we will come back, you're going to wish you destroyed us completely instead of just making us angry." The transmission cut off. The barrier completed its formation. Earth and everything within 4 light years of Sol vanished from the galaxy's awareness, in the darkness behind that barrier. Humanity began to evolve. 50 years had passed since Earth disappeared, and the galaxy had moved on. The Sol system was marked on navigation charts as a dead zone, a place where sensors went dark and ships never returned. Most species avoided it entirely. The human problem, as they called it, had been solved. Captain Yule, of the Kravashi freighter wandering prophet didn't care much about politics or history. He cared about salvage and profit. When his navigation system glitched and pulled him too close to the soul barrier, he cursed and prepared to jump away. Then his sensors caught something that made him freeze. Heat signatures. Massive ones. Industrial-scale energy readings bleeding through the supposedly impenetrable barrier. Yal stared at his screens, checking and rechecking. The barrier was meant to be absolute. Nothing should get through. Nothing should even be detectable. But there they were, power sources that registered as large as cities, maybe larger, pulsing like heartbeats on the other side of that invisible wall. He took recordings and jumped away as fast as his ship could manage. 3 days later, he presented his findings to the Council's Science Division. They looked at his data, looked at him, and dismissed him as a fraud. The barrier is perfect, they told him. Your sensors malfunctioned. Humans cannot possibly generate readings that large. They are isolated, probably dying. Go away. Yo left, unconvinced. But no one would listen to a scavenger captain. So the galaxy continued forgetting about Earth. On the other side of the barrier, things were very different. General Hay-1 stood on the observation deck of Fortress Luna, watching construction drones assemble the final sections of Defensive Platform 7, around Earth's moon. 16 more stations just like it bristled with weapons that would have made the Council's military weep with envy. The solar system had been transformed. Mars was fully inhabited now, home to 3 billion people. Venus was being reshaped. Its hellish atmosphere slowly processed into something breathable. The asteroid belt had been almost entirely consumed, turned into raw materials for the endless construction. Hay-1 was in charge of solar defense, and she took her job seriously. They were prisoners, yes, but they would be ready if anyone ever tried to make them something worse. General, her aide said, Dr. Young-Soo is here. The old scientist shuffled onto the observation deck, his body bent with age, but his eyes still sharp. I wanted you to see it in person, he said. We're ready for the first manned test. Your impossible drive, Hay-1 said. The one that tears holes in space. We've refined it, Young-Soo replied. It's still dangerous, still unstable, but it works. We can achieve faster-than-light travel without using the architect's hyperspace lanes. Below them, through the lunar viewing port, a small ship powered up. Its hull was covered in strange geometric patterns, quantum-locked armor that could shrug off directed energy weapons. The ship's reactor kicked in, and space around it began to shimmer. Then it simply vanished. Where did it go? Hay-1 asked. Alpha Centauri. 4.3 light years. The trip will take about 6 hours using our drive versus the 4 years it would take at standard thrust. Young-Soo smiled. If it survives. The ship returned 11 hours later, its hull scorched but intact. The pilot, a volunteer named Ki-hun, emerged shaking but alive. It works, he reported. It's terrifying and feels like being ripped apart, but it works. Humanity had achieved independent FTL travel. They were no longer trapped by the architect's ancient infrastructure. Across the system, in a research station orbiting Saturn, Dr. Mi-sun made a different kind of discovery. She had been studying the barrier itself for decades, mapping every fluctuation and irregularity. Most scientists assumed it was perfectly uniform. Mi-sun knew better. There are thin spots, she explained to her team. Places where the barrier structure is weaker. Not weak enough to break through, but weak enough that we might be able to push something small across. Her team built a probe the size of a fingernail, equipped with quantum entanglement communicators that didn't rely on normal transmission methods. They aimed it at the thinnest spot they could find and fired it through. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then data began streaming back. The probe had made it. It was outside, floating in a system just beyond council space. The data showed star positions, electromagnetic signatures, and then something else. A hegemony patrol ship, probably checking the barrier's integrity. The ship's weapons locked onto the tiny probe and vaporized it instantly, but not before the probe transmitted everything back to Mei-san. "We have their technology signatures," Mei-san said, looking at her readings. "Their patrol routes, the frequency their shields operate on, everything." She sent her findings to Earth government immediately. Within hours, President Jae-sung, grandson of the legendary President Da-yoon, called an emergency cabinet meeting. The debate was fierce. Jae-sung wanted to wait. They had made incredible progress, but 70 years wasn't enough. They needed more time to prepare, more time to build. General Hae-won disagreed. "Every day they believe we're helpless makes us stronger when we finally reveal ourselves. We should strike now, while they're comfortable in their assumptions." The cabinet split almost evenly. Scientists wanted more research time. Military leaders wanted immediate action. Colonial administrators worried about the cost stock. In the end, they put it to a vote. Not just among themselves, but among all of humanity. 12 billion people across Earth, Mars, Venus, and the hundreds of smaller colonies were asked, should we break out now or wait? The vote took a week. The results were clear. 73% of humanity voted to break the barrier and confront the species that had imprisoned them. Jae-sung accepted the decision. Begin preparations for Operation Breakout. Admiral Kwon, promoted from commander decades ago, took charge of fleet operations. He had spent 50 years building humanity's military from scratch, without reference to council standards or limitations. His ships were nightmares made real fast, heavily armed, and equipped with technology that bent physics in uncomfortable ways. 100 ships, Kwon said. That's all we're taking through. Not enough to conquer the galaxy, but enough to make a point. Engineer Suah designed the breaching mechanism. The Spear of Terra was essentially a missile the size of a destroyer, packed with carefully contained antimatter. When it hit the barrier at sufficient speed, it would create a temporary wound in the fabric of space itself. It will hurt, Suah warned. Reality doesn't like being cut open. The explosion will be visible from 100 light years away. Good, Kwon said. Let them see us coming. While the military prepared, young colonist Janae watched the news from her home on Mars. She had been born after the barrier went up. She'd never seen an alien, never traveled beyond the solar system, never known anything except humanity standing alone. Her generation was different from the ones before. They weren't angry about the quarantine. They didn't remember being part of something larger. They only knew isolation and self-reliance. To them, Earth wasn't a prison, it was a fortress. And now they were going to open the gates. Back near the soul barrier, Captain Yawl had returned. He couldn't explain why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe stubbornness. His sensors hadn't malfunctioned before, and he wanted to prove it. What he saw made his blood freeze. The heat signatures weren't just larger. They were organized, moving, forming into distinct patterns that looked suspiciously like fleet formations. And they were gathering near the barrier's inner surface, all concentrated at one point. Yul ran. His ship jumped to FTL at maximum emergency power, straining engines that were never meant to move that fast. He broadcast on every frequency he could access, his message repeating across the entire sector. This is Captain Yawl of the Wandering Prophet. Soul barrier is compromised. Massive energy concentration detected. Heat signatures consistent with fleet-scale mobilization. They're not contained anymore. Repeat, humans are not contained. They're preparing for something. They're coming out. His message reached Viridian Prime 3. Hours before the Spira hit the barrier, the galaxy had 73 years to forget about. Earth had spent those same years. Forgetting about Mercy. The spear of Terra accelerated to 30% of light speed, and then it hit the barrier. The explosion that followed registered on sensors across 17 sectors. Space itself screamed as the barrier tore open, creating a wound 3 kilometers wide. Through that wound poured Admiral Kwan's first expeditionary fleet. 100 ships emerged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with quantum-locked armor that seemed to shift colors in ways that hurt to look at. They didn't fire their weapons. They didn't charge forward. They simply took position in neutral space, 3 light years from the nearest Council outpost. Then they broadcast one message on all frequencies. We wish to renegotiate. On Viridian Prime, the emergency session of the Galactic Council descended into chaos. Ambassador Hyen of the Velothians was screaming for immediate military response. Others were calling for evacuation. A few enterprising species were already trying to establish diplomatic contact with the human fleet, hoping to negotiate favorable terms before everyone else. Council Intelligence Officer Nari stood at the center of the chamber, her holographic display showing the sensor data from the human ships. Her voice was calm, but her hands shook as she manipulated the images. These vessels do not match any known configuration in our databases, she reported. Their power signatures suggest reactor efficiency approximately 400% beyond our best models. Their hulls incorporate quantum state materials that we believed were theoretically impossible. Their weapons produce readings consistent with causality manipulation. Explain that in simple terms, one counselor demanded. They can shoot you before you see them aim, Nari said quietly. They've advanced roughly 4 centuries beyond galactic standard in 73 years. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be dead. The chamber fell silent. Ambassador Wu Jin arrived the next day, accompanied by his security detail. The lead guard was a man named Chul, and he made every alien in the docking bay uncomfortable. His movements were too smooth, too fast. His eyes tracked objects with inhuman precision. His body temperature registered 15 degrees below what humans were supposed to be. Genetic optimization, Weijin explained when asked. Commander Chul can survive hard vacuum for 17 minutes. He can process information faster than your best computers. He represents what humanity has become when you removed all the ethical limitations we agreed to under Council law. The aliens looked at Chul with new horror. If this was just a security guard, what had they done to their soldiers? The negotiations began. Wu Jin presented humanity's demands clearly. Full council membership with veto power, reparations for 73 years of isolation, formal acknowledgement of human sovereignty over all systems within 20 light years of Sol, and access to all council technology and databases. The hegemony representatives refused immediately. These demands are outrageous. You cannot expect us to reward your illegal breach of containment. Wu Jin nodded to Commander Chul, who activated a small device on his wrist. Something shifted in that moment. Not completely. Not enough to erase 73 years of fear, but enough to matter. Hyen stood and did something no Velothian had done in 3 centuries. He bowed to a member of another species. We imprisoned you because we were afraid. We were wrong. Now we ask, will you help us fight the Vryn? Admiral Kwan mobilized the human fleet. But instead of taking sole command, he proposed something radical. A combined fleet with mixed crews, human innovation paired with alien experience. We have the weapons, but you have the wisdom. Together, we might actually survive this. The combined fleet assembled faster than any purely council force could have. Human ships with their reality-bending drives, combined with Velothian strategic doctrine and Krellian shield harmonics. Different species worked side by side, learning from each other. Engineer Sua led the effort to arm Council ships with human technology. "Our singularity torpedoes can create miniature black holes," she explained. "They're devastating, but dangerous. One miscalculation, and you destroy yourself along with the target." The Vryn swarm reached the hegemony core systems within 2 weeks. The combined fleet engaged them at a system called Vryn Prime, where the Queen had established her breeding grounds. The battle was chaos. Council ships used their superior numbers to create kill zones. Human vessels phased in and out of reality, striking from impossible angles. The Vryn adapted quickly, but not quickly enough. Admiral Kwan watched the tactical display and realized something terrible. The Queen was escaping. Her massive bioship was breaking away from the main formation, heading for deep space where she could rebuild and return with even more ships. "If she escapes, this happens again," Kwan said. "We need to stop her now." His science officer, a Velothian named Talcor, shook his head. "She's too far. By the time we calculate a jump, she'll be gone." Kwan made his choice. "Then we don't calculate. We jump blind." His flagship, the Indomitable, activated its quantum drive without proper coordinates. Reality twisted sickeningly as the ship ripped a hole in space and emerged directly in the Queen's path, alone, surrounded by 10,000 Vryn bioships. "This is Admiral Kwan to all ships. Continue the main attack. I'm buying you time." Engineer Su Ah, who had been overseeing weapons integration on the Indomitable, realized what was happening. She ran to her station without being ordered. "If we're doing this, we're doing it properly. Routing all power to weapons." The Indomitable became a star of destruction. Human quantum weapons combined with overloaded reactors created a sphere of annihilation. Vryn ships died by the hundreds. The Queen's bioship took direct hits, its organic hull rupturing, but there were too many. The Indomitable's shields failed. Hull breaches spread. The crew fought until the very end dot. When the combined fleet arrived 3 minutes later, they found only wreckage. The Vryn Queen was dead. So was Admiral Kwan and his entire crew of 2,847 humans and 412 aliens, who had volunteered to serve on a human vessel. The war was over. The swarm, without its Queen's coordination, scattered and was hunted down over the following months. On Viridian Prime, they built a monument, the Wall of Unity. Admiral Kwan's name was carved at the top, followed by every human who died in the battle. Below them, the names of 14,329 aliens who fell defending the Galaxy. President Ji Sung gave the dedication speech to representatives from 1,000 species. The hegemony feared what would come next when Earth broke away from the galaxy. What came next was this: humanity learned that strength without compassion is tyranny, and the galaxy learned that fear without trust is weakness. Together, we are neither tyranny nor weakness. Together, we are something better. The galaxy began to change. Not quickly, not easily, but human innovation started spreading. Council regulations were rewritten to allow more experimentation. Species that had stagnated for centuries began advancing again. And humanity, freed from isolation but bound by responsibility, continued to evolve. Late one night, Ambassador Nari requested a private meeting with Wu Jin. She looked nervous, which was unusual for her. "The architects left something else," she said. "Something I kept secret, even from my own government." She showed him coordinates. A location far beyond explored space. "What's there?" Wu Jin asked. They called it the Transcendence Gate, a doorway to whatever they became when they left physical existence behind. They left a message. Only those worthy may follow. Wu Jin stared at the coordinates. "Why tell me?" "Because 50 years ago, another message appeared at those same coordinates. It said one word: soon. The architects had been watching the galaxy. Watching us. Watching humanity especially. I think they're waiting to see if we'll join them. Join them how? Nari shook her head. I don't know. But whatever it is, it's beyond anything the Council has ever attempted. The architects built hyperspace lanes. They seeded life across galaxies. They evolved beyond physical form. And they think humanity might be ready to follow that path. On Earth, the next generation was being born. Children who would grow up in a galaxy where humanity was both feared and respected. Where human technology was changing civilization itself. Where the barriers between species were slowly breaking down. Young Tae-min, grandson of the Admiral Tae-min, who had sent that first defiant message 73 years ago, graduated from the academy with highest honors. His first assignment was as captain of the UES Discovery, a ship designed for deep space exploration. His orders were simple. Investigate the coordinates Ambassador Nari had discovered. Find the Transcendence Gate. Discover what the architects wanted humanity to become. As his ship prepared to jump to FTL, Tae-min looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beings who had surpassed physical existence were watching, waiting, judging whether humanity was worthy to join them. The galaxy had feared what would come next when Earth broke away. What came next was humanity's choice to be worthy of its power. To use strength not for conquest, but for protection. To evolve not through domination, but through cooperation. And in the dark between the stars, something ancient watched with approval, ready to open doors that had been closed for 1,000,000 years, ready to welcome humanity to something greater than any species had imagined possible. The Discovery jumped to FTL, carrying humanity's hopes toward an unknown destiny. What came next would change everything. Every light on Viridian Prime went out. All at once. Emergency systems failed. Backup generators didn't trigger. Life support systems stuttered and died. For 17 seconds, the most advanced space station in the galaxy was completely dead in space. Then power returned, snapping back on as suddenly as it had vanished. That was one ship, Wu Jin said into the shocked silence. One ship using technology you cannot detect, cannot counter, and cannot understand. We could have destroyed this station. Instead, we proved a point. You forgot the first rule of quarantine. What you lock away has nothing to lose and everything to gain. We had 73 years with nothing but time and motivation. He leaned forward. Now, let's discuss those demands again. But the hegemony had already made their decision. They would not negotiate. They would not show weakness. Within hours, they assembled an armada 6,000 ships, pulled from defensive positions across 8 sectors. Fleet Commander Verton of the Krellian Dominion led them personally. The armada jumped to the Soul Barrier and found Admiral Quan waiting with his 100 ships. Verton opened communications immediately. By authority of the Galactic Council, you are ordered to power down your vessels and surrender for processing. You have violated quarantine and will be held accountable. Quan's response was simple. No, then you will be destroyed. You can try. Vartan expected the human ships to fight. He expected them to maneuver, to fire, to engage in some kind of tactical response. Instead, they simply vanished. Not jumped to FTL, not cloaked. Vanished. His sensors went crazy, tracking ghost signatures that appeared and disappeared faster than his systems could process. The human ships reappeared behind his formation, then beside it, then above it. They flickered in and out of normal space like light through trees, impossible to predict or target. What kind of drive is that? Verton demanded. His science officer looked terrified. They're not using hyperspace lanes, sir. They're punching holes directly through space-time. Our sensors can't track them. because they're not actually moving through normal space between jumps. Quan's voice came through the communication channel, calm and measured. We can be anywhere, anytime. Your hyperspace lanes are highways we no longer need. Your defensive positions are meaningless. Your fleet formations are targets. Stand down. Vartan, to his credit, refused. All ships open fire. Saturation pattern. 6,000 ships unleashed their weapons at once. The combined firepower could have vaporized a small moon. The human ships phased in and out of reality, and most shots passed harmlessly through empty space. The few that connected splashed against shields that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Then humanity returned fire. Just once. A single coordinated volley from all 100 ships. Every single vessel in Veritan's armada went dark simultaneously. Engines died. Weapons offline. Life support running on emergency reserves. The crews were alive and unharmed, but their ships were now nothing more than expensive debris floating in space. This is Admiral Quan to all Council forces. The broadcast went out on every channel. We have disabled your fleet. Not destroyed, disabled. Every crew member survives. Every ship can be repaired. This is humanity's mercy. We could have killed 6,000 ships worth of people in that single volley. Remember that when you vote on our membership. He paused, and his next words were directed specifically at Vertan. You have 1 week to make your decision. After that, we start visiting homeworlds. Not to attack, just to visit. To demonstrate that your defenses mean nothing, and your safety exists only because we permit it. Choose wisely. The human fleet vanished again, leaving behind thousands of disabled warships and one very clear message. Back on Viridian Prime, Ambassador Wu Jin was escorted to a private meeting with Council Intelligence Officer Nari. She looked exhausted, and she kept glancing at Commander Chul with something between fear and fascination. We need to share something with you, she said. Information the hegemony has kept secret for 8 centuries. She projected a hologram showing ancient text, written in a language that predated most current species. This was left by the architects in one of their deepest vaults. We found it 300 years ago. Wu Jin read the translation. If another species emerges with our nature-rapid adaptation, aggressive expansion, refusal to accept limitations, do not cage them. Guide them, or they will surpass you and hate you for the chains you placed upon them. The hegemony read this warning, Nari continued, and they chose containment anyway. They were afraid, and fear made them stupid. Why are you telling me this? Wu Jin asked. Because I think you deserve to know why you were imprisoned, and because I'm going to vote yes on your membership. Not out of fear, though I am afraid, but because the architects were right. You can't cage evolution. You can only decide whether to grow with it or be left behind. The vote took place 1 week later, exactly as promised. Species after species cast their decision. The Velothians voted no. The Krellians abstained. But the smaller species, those who had suffered under hegemony dominance for centuries, voted overwhelmingly in favor of humanity. When the final count was tallied, humanity had won membership by exactly 3 votes. On Earth, celebrations erupted in every city. They had done it. They had broken free and forced the galaxy to accept them. But President Jae-sung didn't celebrate. He sat in his office watching reports of the vote and thought about what Nari had told Wu Jin. The architect's warning. The choice the hegemony had made out of fear. Admiral Quan returned home a hero. Parades lined the streets of New Seoul. But in quiet moments, he wondered if they had won through strength or terror. And whether there was really a difference. In the shadows, a group of officers led by Colonel Sang-mi began meeting secretly. They called their plan Protocol Retribution. If the Council ever turned on humanity again, they would be ready. More than ready. The galaxy had accepted humanity. But acceptance born from fear was not the same as trust. And in the dark between stars, old wounds began to fester while new threats stirred in the depths of space. Drawn by all the noise and fury of humanity's return, 2 weeks after the vote, the galaxy remained tense. Humanity had won membership, but nobody pretended it was victory. The Council accepted them the way a small animal accepts a predator standing over it, not with welcome, but with the desperate hope that submission would mean survival. On Earth, President Jae-sung faced his own problems. General Hae-won had become a voice for millions of humans who believed the Council's acceptance meant nothing. She spoke at rallies, gave interviews, and her message never changed. They voted yes because we scared them. The moment they stop being scared, they'll try to cage us again. We need to strike first. Her support grew daily. Colonial populations, especially those born after the barrier went up, saw her as a hero. They had never known peace with the Council. Why should they trust it now? Old scientist Young Soo, now barely able to walk without assistance, attended a private meeting with the president. His hands shook as he held his tea. "Fear is a tool," he said quietly, "but it's a dangerous one. People who fear you will wait for any chance to destroy you. We survived 73 years because we adapted. If we become conquerors, we become exactly what they feared we were. What do you suggest?" Jae-sung asked. "Give them a reason to trust us. Show strength, yes, but also show restraint. Show that we're more than just clever killers." Jae-sung wanted to believe that was possible. But he knew human nature, and he knew the Council's nature. Trust would be hard to build between species who had started their relationship with imprisonment and threats. The attack came 3 days later. Ambassador Wu Jin was attending a cultural exchange event on Viridian Prime, trying to demonstrate that humanity wanted peaceful integration. Commander Chul stood nearby, his enhanced senses scanning the crowd constantly. Security protocols were heavy, but everyone was trying to appear relaxed. Chul's augmented hearing caught it first, temporal frequency that shouldn't exist in normal space. His mind, processing information thousands of times faster than baseline human thought, identified the source in 0.003 seconds. A temporal bomb. A weapon that didn't just kill its target, but erased them from the timeline entirely. As if they had never existed. A radical faction from 3 Council species had joined together, united by the belief that humanity needed to be removed completely. They had smuggled in technology that was banned by every civilized species. If the bomb detonated, Wu Jin and 50 other delegates would simply cease to have ever existed. Chul didn't hesitate. His enhanced muscles launched him across the room, moving faster than most beings could perceive. He wrapped his arms around the temporal device. Just as it activated, reality twisted. Chul felt himself being pulled in every direction at once, his existence being erased from every moment of history. His parents would never have met. His childhood would vanish. His service to humanity would become blank space in the records. But his augmented body was more than human. His DNA had been rewritten to incorporate quantum-locked states that resisted temporal manipulation. He couldn't stop the bomb, but he could contain it, absorbing the temporal energy into his own body and preventing it from spreading. For 2.7 seconds, Chul existed in every moment of his life simultaneously. Then he was gone. Not dead, erased, no body. Remained because his body had never existed, but the bomb's energy had been contained. Every delegate in the room survived. The silence that followed was absolute. Ambassador Wu Jin stared at the empty space where his friend and protector had been standing. Other delegates were checking themselves, realizing they should have died. Understanding that someone they had feared as a dangerous hybrid had just saved them, investigation teams swarmed the station. They found the conspirators. Within hours, 3 species working together, convinced they were saving the galaxy from human domination. The evidence was overwhelming. The temporal weapon was traced back to a black market dealer who specialized in architect technology. Admiral Kwan received the news on his flagship and immediately began mobilizing the fleet. General Hay 1 called for total war. They tried to erase us from history. We should erase them from the present. President Jae-sung called an emergency cabinet meeting. The debate was fierce. Military commanders wanted immediate retaliation. Colonial governors demanded blood for blood. Even moderates like Ambassador Wu Jin struggled to find words to justify mercy. Then Jae-sung made his decision. We're going to do something the Council has never done. We're going to show restraint. The room exploded in argument. General Hay 1 stood up, her face red with rage. They tried to kill our people. They used a weapon that would have erased them from existence itself. And you want to do nothing? Not nothing, Jae-sung said quietly. I want to show them that we're better than they think we are. Commander Chul died saving not just humans, but 50 other species. He proved that we value life, even alien life, even the lives of people who fear us. If we respond with genocide, we prove we're the monsters they believed we were. They'll see it as weakness, Hay 1 warned. Then they'll be wrong, Jae-sung replied. And we'll prove them wrong by being strong enough to choose mercy. The next day, Admiral Kwan stood before the full Galactic Council. The chamber was packed. Every species wanted to hear humanity's response. Many expected war. Some hoped for it, seeing an excuse to unite against the human threat. Kwan's speech was short. Security Chief Chol gave his life to protect this council. He was engineered to be stronger, faster, more capable than baseline humanity. You feared him. You saw him as a weapon. But when your lives were in danger, he chose to save you. All of you. At the cost of his own existence. He paused, letting that sink in. We could respond to this assassination attempt with violence. Our fleet could turn every homeworld of the conspirators into ash. We have that power. But we won't. Because Commander Chol's sacrifice taught us something. It's easy to be destructive when you're powerful. It's harder to be constructive. We choose the harder path. Then Ambassador Wu Jin stepped forward with humanity's actual response. We demand justice, not vengeance. The conspirators will be tried under council law. The dealers who sold them architect technology will be hunted down. And humanity will contribute forces to this hunt. We will help you stop the proliferation of temporal weapons. Not because you asked, but because it's the right thing to do. The Council didn't know how to respond. They had prepared for war. They had anticipated threats. Instead, they were being offered partnership. That night, Ambassador Haiyan of the Velothians requested a private meeting with Wu Jin. The old alien looked tired. We were wrong about everything. We saw your strength and assumed cruelty. We saw your innovation and assumed chaos. We locked you away because we were afraid of what you might become. You weren't completely wrong, Wu Jin admitted. We are dangerous. We are aggressive. We do change too fast for comfort. But you're also capable of growth we never imagined, Haiyan said. Commander Chol could have escaped that bomb. His enhancements would have allowed it. He chose to stay. Wu Jin nodded, grief clear in his eyes. He told me once that being more than human meant holding yourself to a higher standard, not a lower one. Will you help us? Haiyan asked quietly. The hegemony has ruled through fear for too long. We've made too many mistakes. The galaxy needs something different. Maybe it needs humanity's chaos. Before Wu Jin could answer, emergency alarms began wailing throughout the station. A new signal had appeared on long-range sensors. Something massive. Something that didn't match any known signature. Council Intelligence Officer Nari appeared on communication screens throughout Viridian Prime, her voice urgent. Unknown fleet detected. Origin point. Dark space beyond charted systems. Number of ships, at least 17,000. They're headed toward populated sectors. The Vryn swarm had arrived, and humanity was about to face its first real test as a council. Member defending the same species who had imprisoned them just 5 years ago. The Vryn swarm moved through space like a plague of metal locusts. Each ship was biological in origin, grown rather than built, and they operated with perfect hive coordination. They had destroyed 17 systems before the Council even understood what they were facing. Entire worlds were stripped of resources in days, their populations consumed to fuel the swarm's endless expansion. Admiral Quan studied the tactical data in his command center. The numbers were bad. The Council fleet was designed for political displays and defensive patrols, not total war against an enemy that didn't negotiate or retreat. They'll lose, he said flatly. Their tactics are 300 years old. Their ships are built for show as much as function. Against an enemy like this, they'll be slaughtered. President Jae-sung appeared on the communication screen. The hegemony is demanding the Council fleet engage immediately. They're not asking for our help. Of course not, Quan said. Pride won't let them admit they need us. Can we win without them asking? Quan considered. Maybe, if we commit everything. But our people won't want to die for species who imprisoned us. You know that. Intelligence officer Nari had downloaded data from the first encounters with the Vryn. The swarm operated with ruthless efficiency. They didn't have culture or politics. They existed only to consume, replicate, and expand. Each ship was controlled by a piece of the Queen's consciousness, making them perfectly coordinated, but also vulnerable to decapitation strikes. The problem was reaching the Queen. She stayed deep inside the swarm's formation, protected by thousands of bio-dash ships. While the Council debated strategy, Colonel Song-mi saw her opportunity. Protocol Retribution had been building quietly for 5 years, placing quantum beacons on hegemony worlds. These devices could disable planetary shields and defense systems in one coordinated strike. Originally designed as insurance against Council aggression, Sang-mi now saw a different use. If we activate the beacons, she told her fellow conspirators, we can force the hegemony to accept our help. They'll have no choice but to acknowledge human superiority. The plan was elegant and ruthless. Let the Vryn get close to hegemony worlds, then offer to save them. But only after demonstrating that humanity could destroy them any time they wanted. But intelligence. Officer Jin had infiltrated Sang-mi's network. She was young, one of the generation born after the barrier, and she had joined Protocol Retribution, initially believing in its defensive purpose. When she realized what Sang-mi actually planned, she faced an impossible choice: protect the conspiracy or betray her own people. She chose truth. Jin brought the evidence directly to President Jae-sung. Complete plans, names, beacon locations, everything. They're going to make us into the villains, she said, her voice shaking. They're going to prove the Council right about us. Jae-sung read through the files, his face darkening. How many people are involved? 17 officers. Maybe 200 support personnel. Most don't know the full plan. The president made his decision immediately. He confronted Sang-mi in her own headquarters, surrounded by her loyal troops. You've planted weapons on allied worlds. You're prepared to hold entire populations hostage. You've become exactly what we swore we'd never be. Sang-mi didn't deny it. The Vryn will destroy the Council. Then they'll blame us for not acting sooner. Better to have leverage and not need it, and need it and not have it. No, Jae-sung said quietly. Better to be trusted than feared. You're under arrest. Sang-mi's hand moved toward her weapon. 20 enhanced soldiers loyal to her began raising their rifles. For a moment, civil war hung in the balance. Then Admiral Kwan appeared on every screen in the facility. Stand down, Colonel. I've already deactivated your beacons. Protocol retribution is over. Sang-mi realized she had lost. Her people lowered their weapons. She was taken into custody, and Jae-sung faced his hardest decision yet. He could hide this. Cover it up. Pretend it never happened. Or he could do something unprecedented. The next day, Ambassador Wu Jin stood before the full Galactic Council and revealed everything. Elements of our military attempted to place hostile devices on your worlds. They planned to use the Vryn crisis as leverage against you. We discovered the conspiracy and terminated it. Every beacon has been removed or deactivated. This is humanity's promise. We will police ourselves. We will hold ourselves accountable. The chamber sat in stunned silence. Species that had never admitted weakness watched as humanity exposed its own attempted treachery. Ambassador, Hyen was the first to speak. You didn't have to tell us? Yes, we did, Wu Jin replied. Trust isn't built by hiding mistakes. It's built by fixing them.